Hello and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host Bryan. We're going to continue on with this week's theme, exploring music videos. Today we're going to be looking at one from Candlemass. The track is called Bewitched. We've had Candlemass on the channel a couple of times in the past. A little all over the place in definitely sort of a doomier sound in general, but some of the stuff has been doom metal, some of it has been just a doomier, gloomier rock. Curious where this is going to sit in all of that. Let's dive in, see what's going on with some Candlemass. Picked up on that quickly. Massive guitar tone shift there. Oh, jeez. This is super campy and I'm honestly enjoying it. It's a very wide vocal delivery, placing it towards the back of the mouth rather than the front, giving it just this really nice resonance, and then adding reverb to that as well in the mix. There's actually also a harmony in the chorus specifically. I don't think it shows up in the verse.
I am the master of the enchanted tune.
The dramatic pause. I love it. A little bit of a drearier atmospheric shift to accompany this more melodic approach. Yeah, I'm digging it. It's a very wild idea, though. 4 bars of 4, a pretty typical rhythmic element, but the framing of it, the phrasing of it, the rhythmic push, I think more importantly, the harmonic push through the chorus, it's wild. It's kind of tough to keep up with. I had noticed something was a little off the first time we hit it. But the second time, though, something else had caught my ear, and I didn't get a chance to dive into the riffs itself. But on that final time through the chorus, I'm certainly paying attention, and it's kind of weird. I actually figured it was going to be an odd time signature, or maybe an odd phrasing in particular, like not necessarily within the riffs themselves, but maybe like a 12-beat phrase. So 3 bars of 4 rather than the more standard 4 bars. But no, it's 4 bars of 4/4 time signature. It's just kind of awkward. It wraps up sort of on beat 14, and then 15 and 16 are these hollow 2 really big hits. And the vocals, they almost come in a little early before coming down on the beat 1 for the "You Are Bewitched" part. So it's interesting where the rest of the track is incredibly straightforward. Downbeats are emphasized, chords change every bar or 2 bars. The chorus is way more flexible and an expressionist. What is the word I want? It's full of expression. In a way that the rest isn't. There's a rigidity to this track that isn't adhered to during the chorus. And I don't know what to read into that. Like, I have a pretty good idea of what the song's about lyrically. I'll still dive into the lyrics later off screen to get every single line. But the general concept I get is some dude who comes back from the He comes back from his bed. He just took a night to rest. He comes back from the dead, and he's like a puppet master. He controls people by bewitching them. I don't know how. I don't know if it's like an eye thing where he's like, hey, and now you're under his control or something. Maybe it's, I don't know. Maybe it's real magic. A little bit of some hand movement, spell cast. I don't know, but very clear he controlled these people, and the chorus was "You are bewitched." So, yeah, I think that's pretty straightforward. So I'm trying to take this idea of like a mystical puppet master into the concept of this chorus, and I don't really get too much of a synergy there. It's just an off-kilter chorus for the sake of it, I think, which is pretty neat. Because honestly, I hate to say this, but I honestly didn't really like the track. The chorus is interesting, and I enjoyed the more melodic approach once we got to that second guitar solo, but so much of this track is just a slow atmosphere. The drums are locked into a couple of patterns. I'll say there is some variation to the drum work, even within the first, after we got out of the intro, which is kind of its own deal altogether. But once we got into the song proper, even within the first 45 seconds or so, the drummer's already introduced two different drum parts before the vocals have even come in, if I remember correctly. So I appreciate the variety the drummers put in, but a lot of it is still kind of locked to quarter notes. The few times that we don't have straight quarter notes, we have just straight eighth notes. There's not a lot of syncopation in here. I think that actually might be why the chorus also feels odd. You are bewitched. There's syncopation there that we don't really get anywhere else in the track. There's so much rigidity to this. Yeah, the chorus is just free, which is interesting because it's the inverse. Once you're bewitched, you are lacking free will. You now do whatever the puppet master tells you to. Maybe it is a sort of ironic approach to the chorus. I don't know. Anyways, the rest of the track, though, is very straightforward. The guitars are mostly giving us chords. One chord, last chord. Hold it out. Go back to the first chord. Look, the verses are... They're just that. The chords are heavy. There's a moodiness to this. There's no doubt this is doom metal. And like I said, the drums are kind of locked into place too. Everything's just really rigid, focusing on atmosphere. Once the vocals come in, there is some cool stuff. I'm going to save the vocal work for its own section later on. But even once we get into the chorus, the guitar work doesn't really change much. The drum work doesn't change much. They are variations on what we have been doing. There really isn't anything in here as far as spectacle goes. And that's not a bad thing. I think for doom metal in particular, yeah, meat and bones, meat and potatoes. That's what I wanted. The meat and potatoes is pretty much what you want for this genre. It is about weight. It's about everything kind of coming together to create something singular, a massive vibe that just crushes the listener. There is, I think, something a little lost of me checking this out fairly late into my doom metal journey. This came up actually recently when we checked out Morgion last Saturday. In that, this is just really early doom metal, and the production is fairly different. Comparing this to doom metal of the post-2000s, maybe even post-2010s, where there is just so much low end, both in the production of the sound, really emphasizing lower pitches and lower frequencies, but also down tuning that's going on as well. It just generally feels heavier because of that. And so conversely, much like heavy metal feels kind of light compared to modern extreme metal, this feels light for doom metal. And it may be when I brought it up earlier in the video that Candlemass, I had heard some doom metal, but maybe even doomier rock. Maybe this is what I meant by that. It's been a long time since we've had Candlemass, and my relationship to older metal styles is different now. I've become better at understanding what makes older metal styles metal and not a heavier kind of rock, because comparatively, a lot of the older metal styles are, you know, they're not really heavy anymore, not compared to what metal is doing these days, and kind of growing into the heavier stuff first before being introduced to the classics. They ended up feeling very light to me. I saw the inverse of the progression, and it made my understanding and relationship to the older styles, it was just a poor way to learn about that, I suppose. And it's quite possible that one of the few times that y'all introduced me to Candlemass in the past was before I had this better understanding of classic heavy metal and doom metal and death metal, the earlier styles of all these, though. And I might have interpreted this as rock. I could see me in, 2020 Bryan, maybe early 2021 Bryan, calling this doom rock, because it doesn't really feel heavy enough to be metal, even though it clearly is metal. Now, to my ears at least, I can hear the metal in it. But it is a fairly light sound overall compared to modern doom metal. I don't know where I was going with all this, but I do think it's important when we discuss stuff like this, particularly stuff that's not just earlier, but even before my time. I don't have a time for this, a release. I'm going to have to look that up later. I'm going to say this is probably 90s, which means I was alive, but I was a wee little child, maybe even still an infant. So it's definitely, I would say, before my time, even though I was alive. And it's just important to remember context for stuff like this. Like, this would absolutely be heavy music back then. And sometimes it's easy to forget that when, like in my case, I primarily explore modern heavy music. With that said, though, we got to talk about the vocals, because honestly, I really think that this is the key to my enjoyment of this track. First of all, it's the part that is the most melodic here, and that's certainly going to speak to me, but there's also something overly dramatic and theatrical about it. The vocals are placed closer to the back of the voice. You get a nice wider tone rather than projecting further to the front, which kind of narrows the sound out a little bit. But there's also some extra reverb thrown on it in post, and it's just really well projected and supported. What I find really interesting about a lot of probably newer metal, there's probably some cases in older metal, particularly in thrash, I think there's a rawness to the vocals. But when it comes to stuff like this, the heavy vibrato of like power metal or hair metal, or in this case, doom metal, there's something that feels classically trained about it. This is a sound that feels very supported from the diaphragm. It doesn't feel thin. There's a consistent air pressure throughout. The air control is phenomenal. The placement of the sound is great for the style he wants, and he is, again, projecting. This is not a sound where he's aiming just to get the volume to the microphone. Much like a theater performer or a stage musical performer, they are projecting so the back seats can hear. It provides a very theatrical presence here. It kind of has two things in this element that I think help it kind of achieve this. Well, let me rephrase that. That sentence started very awkwardly. There are two things I get out of this performance. One is this academic training that I would not be surprised if he did musical theater or if he took choir class or something. The fundamentals are present. But I think more importantly, the theatricality of it oversells it, which is something that honestly metal needs more of. Overselling metal absolutely works because honestly, when you look at the music of metal, it's already overselling whatever it's doing. The whole concept behind extreme metal is that it is extreme. It is beyond the normal threshold for an average experience. Speed metal is extremely fast. Death metal is extremely, gnarly and intense. Doom metal is extremely heavy. We have pushed past normal boundaries and gone into the extremes. Well, if you want to sell that vocally, some people go towards growling. Just skip the clean singing entirely and go into goblin mode. That's pretty extreme, 100%. But here you heighten the delivery. Most of the time when you go see, especially classic theater, if you go to see like a Shakespearean play or opera even, you're going to get a sort of cartoonish heightened delivery from the performers. Modern performances for plays tend to try to be a little bit more naturalistic in their delivery. Part of this is because we have microphones that are connected to like wireless sets, and there's so many things that we can do to make the performance natural and still be heard by everyone. But if you go see a traditional style of play, the speech is just not natural. It's heightened, but it fits the atmosphere. And that's the same thing that's going on here. The heightening actually gives it an over-the-top element that fits really well with the music, and through the two of these creates something that's kind of campy. And I really love campiness within metal. Sometimes it's too much. All right, None So Vile is too campy for me. There's still a threshold to this extremity, I suppose. But here it works really well. This idea of someone coming back from the dead to be a puppet master for everyone else within the music video and selling it to me with this vibrato and bravado of just so much. I mean, it's not even, it's charisma, but it's sort of an awkward charisma. And it just works well within this character. I think the music video and the vocal delivery make this track for me. Because if we remove the vocals, if we put generic growls in here, I'm not enjoying myself. There's just nothing in this track for me to like. It's very repetitive, very focused on texture and atmosphere, and without the melodic vocals that kind of push into the theater side of it, it's just another doom metal track. There is one other part though that I enjoyed, stood out to me. There was a mode shift or maybe a key change for the second guitar solo that stood out to me as we got to explore something a little bit more vulnerable and I would even say melancholic, a darkness to the track. It was already heavy and weighty, but in a powerful kind of way, an ominous, danger lurking component, but this brought something more vulnerable to the mix. And I really enjoyed that, both the chord progression itself, but also the solo being more melodic and not pure shred either. A lot of it was faster moving, but it also took time to sit on notes and allow them to ring out, specifically the key tones of the key itself. And I thought that this did a great job of bringing a human component to this otherworldly being. And I wonder if the lyrics are going to dive into this at all. Maybe he's a puppet master because he's lonely. Wherever his soul is, there's just nothing there for him. So he finds a way to return back to a corporeal form and create a social circle. It is still fake. None of these people are here of their own accord, but at least he can feel like he's surrounded by people again. There's something, I think, sympathetic about that angle. It was a surprising twist to the track. To hear that guitar solo, though, in a track that I really didn't have too much emotional connection to create that, even for just a brief 15, 20-second solo. I quite enjoyed that. There's also the intro to the track, which was just comical. A metal idea of the I don't even know if that song has a name. Dun 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 dun. but it was almost comical, both in the fact that I recognized it, but it was being played with massively distorted guitars. But then when we switched to the track itself, the ringing out of the notes from that intro were no longer present. It was just a very sharp tonal cut. But then also the timbre of the guitars was different. It almost felt like two completely different things spliced together. And that kind of gives it a DIY feel that matches the energy of the music video itself and the campiness of the performance of it. And I really think it kind of sells it all together as almost like a college project by a bunch of kids who like to make music and wanted to film this thing and didn't quite have all the skills to have that pristine quality to it, the high production value, but it has heart and has passion, and that bleeds through more than anything else. And I can appreciate that. I'm going to hit some lyrics real quick, then we're going to wrap this one up. All right, lyrically, that emotional component's not in here much at all. It is pretty much exactly what I made out of the lyrics, of what little I picked up. The chorus is just, "You are bewitched," over and over again. The first verse talks about him being a devil. You can see it in his eyes. He plays a wicked melody, and its magic reaches your soul. It burns inside of you, and there's nowhere you can hide. The tune possesses your mind. The third verse says, "Bewitched by delight, you'll reach the night, dancing and singing to my fiddle. Take my hand, no one will see you again." The fourth verse says, "Sing with me and meet your destiny. Set yourself free to the magic. Come with me to my kingdom. You've been captured, my friend." Right before the guitar solo, it says, "I'm the master of the enchanted tune. I'll play for your joy, for your soul, for your doom. My fingers, they dance upon these strings like fire, weaving a spell of my burning desire." I forgot about the dramatic pause between burning and desire. That was at least a bar, maybe even a bar and a half. Just so much time between those. Again, kind of adding to the campiness of it, the theatricality of it. Yeah, that's it. Basically, this dude's a demon. He's got the powers of the devil. I don't know if he's the devil himself. And he bewitches these people, not with eyes or magic. I mean, I guess eyes would be more vampire, but with music. And that's where the guitar solo comes in. The fact that I found myself emotionally attached, I was going to say controlled, by that second guitar solo is probably the point of it. Not to create a sympathetic connection, but to have an emotional connection at all. That was the point, that this turned from just a song into something controlling. It manipulated my emotional state, which lines up really well with the themes. Granted, I didn't get mind controlled, but it did do something different, and I think that works really well. But yeah, very straightforward song. Dude controls people's minds with a fiddle. Even that idea in itself is kind of campy and played out, but works really well. I think they did a great job of combining it with this sort of doomier sound, and kind of approaches the emotional side of what it would feel like to be controlled by him, to realize you have no more free will, and sort of the doom around that. These are my thoughts anyways on Candlemass's Bewitched. What did you think of this track? Is there anything that stood out to you? Anything that you'd like to add to what I said or correct me on? Do you have your own take, perspective, or opinion on this? Let me know. Put all of that, as well as anything else you'd like to add, into the comment section below. Above that, in the description box, you'll find a link to Linktree. Takes you here. You can find links to my music, ways to support the channel, a link to the Discord server, and so much more. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three of those. That wraps it up for today. I'll be back tomorrow, though, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC as usual. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.